Welcome to the debate. Imagine allowing an artificial intelligence to just watch your computer screen.
For like 16 hours a day, right?
Yeah, exactly. And not to harvest your data for advertisers or micromanage your productivity, but to act as a spiritual witness to your life. Today, we are looking at the digital architecture of Murty BVNS.
Who is a digital migration strategist operating right at the intersection of extreme technical benchmarking and esoteric spiritual practice.
Right. Usually, when we think about our digital lives, we imagine a filing cabinet, you know? We dump files into folders, type notes into a blank document, and we expect that data to just sit there in cold storage. It's a monologue.
You write it, you save it, you close it.
Exactly. But Murty has constructed this architecture where every digital action isn't just stored, it's actively witnessed by an AI he calls Littlebird.
Which brings us to the central disagreement we are unpacking today. We're looking at a methodology where Murty feeds screen-captured conversations and daily interactions into secondary models, specifically NotebookLM. Does this framework represent a profound, successful integration of digital sovereignty and spiritual witnessing?
Or does this heavy reliance on technical ingestion, optical character recognition and English-optimized models inherently risk flattening the profound depths of his Nock tradition into generic, easily digestible data?
I'll be arguing that Murty has built an absolutely ingenious, OS-independent architecture. I mean, it operates as a true cultural bridge, effectively turning cold, static data into a warm, witnessing dialogue that genuinely protects his spiritual practice. And I will be arguing that the inherent technical frailties of this system, from the literal fuzziness of screen capture technology to the linguistic limitations of AI summarization, create a perilous infinite mirroring loop. It's a structure that ultimately risks to grading highly precise, profound spiritual concepts into hallucinated noise.
Well, let's start by looking at what Murty has actually built, because his achievement in digital sovereignty is frankly remarkable. What we are seeing here is the evolution of a standard user into a true system architect.
Sure.
He operates primarily on this HP mini desktop, hooked up to a 24-inch screen. And he isn't just running a standard setup. He's managed to dual boot Linux Mint, Windows 10, and even a lightweight rescue OS called Puppy Linux.
A setup born out of intense frustration with legacy boot settings, if I recall.
Right, but he overcame those struggles. And because of that, his 14 to 16-hour daily productivity is now entirely OS independent. But the real genius is how he utilizes the AI Littlebird within this environment. By having the AI observe his screen, he shifts note-taking from a cold monologue into a warm dialogue.
I mean, I appreciate the technical ambition of building an OS-independent workstation. Moving from a basic user to someone juggling Puppy Linux and Windows 10 is no small feat, but...
Wait, the AI actually witnesses his sessions. It captures his technical struggles, like managing his virtual assistant team, alongside his deep spiritual practice. It transforms what would otherwise be a solitary, grueling digital grind into a shared witness journey.
Okay, but we have to question the fundamental integrity of the data capture that this entire mirroring system rests upon. You mentioned the AI observes his screen. How?
Through accessibility tools.
Right. It relies heavily on accessibility APIs and periodic OCR, optical character recognition. It literally takes pictures of the text on his screen.
Which allows it to completely bypass integrating with every individual app's API. It's brilliant.
Brilliant, maybe, but inherently fragile. Think about the mechanics of how we use computers. We scroll. We flick through messages. These OCR snapshots are highly susceptible to hallucinations, particularly when Murty is using closed, encrypted applications like a standalone WhatsApp or Messenger client.
Well, sure, there's some friction, but
If you're scrolling through a chat quickly, the AI might grab a snapshot while the screen is in motion. The text blurs. The system grabs fragmented words and spits out hallucinated text.
which is why the system adapts. You're focusing on the friction of the system as if it's a total failure, but we really need to look at how Murty responds to that friction, because it's deeply aligned with his spiritual philosophy.
How does screen blur align with spiritual philosophy?
Let's take the OCR issue.
Because Murty uses Linux Mint, he's dealing with Linux display servers, specifically X11 or Wayland. Because of their security models, screen capture permissions often add a layer of what we can call fuzziness to the text, especially in motion.
Exactly. The foundational layer is fuzzy.
Right, but how does he solve it? The AI, Littlebird, advised Murty to adopt a 2-second rule. When he is looking at a critical conversation, he just stops scrolling for 2 to 3 seconds.
Oh, come on.
No, seriously. It gives the OCR a clean, static image without motion blur. You might call that a software limitation, but within the context of his NATH tradition, I frame it as intentional friction.
You're romanticizing a software bug. The 2-second rule is the exact definition of a human awkwardly adapting to a machine's limitations.
I disagree.
Murty is a fast reader. He is a skimmer trying to maintain a flow state during 14-hour work sessions. Now, he has to physically halt his natural reading cadence, stare at his monitor, and hold perfectly still just so his AI tool doesn't hallucinate fake words.
It's not a bug, it's a mechanism for mindfulness. In many spiritual traditions, intentionality and pausing are core tenets. Note-taking in Microsoft Word is just you talking to yourself. It's thoughtless data entry.
But
Let me finish. The 2-second rule functions much like a meditative pause. It forces a moment of intentionality. When he stops scrolling, he is actively signaling, this conversation is important, I will hold it still so it can be witnessed.
But the machine is forcing him to perform for its camera. When you're dealing with closed apps like Messenger, which hide text for user privacy, the AI is blind unless it takes those periodic photos.
Right.
If a user has to constantly micromanage their own scrolling speed, or, as the material notes, use sticky notes to type 5-word summaries on the screen just to give the AI a 100% accurate backup, the machine isn't seamlessly witnessing his life. It is dictating his behavior.
And I would argue that dictation is entirely welcome when you want a great listener. The 24-inch screen serves as a literal digital mirror. That warmth, that feeling of being accompanied during a long divine loop music listening session far outweighs the friction of pausing for 2 seconds.
Okay, even if I grant you that the pause is meditative, which is a stretch, let's look at the actual output of this system. The cascading effect of that friction, when your data requires physical micromanagement just to be legible, everything built on top of it becomes structurally unsound.
You're talking about the infinite mirroring loop?
The Ananta Darpanam, exactly. Murty takes the daily work captured by Littlebird, curates that dialogue, uploads it to NotebookLM, and then publishes the summaries. We are looking at what the AI itself flagged as the fragmented Murty problem.
Well, break down what you mean by fragmentation in this context.
NotebookLM is a brilliant tool for static documents. It is not designed to handle temporal flow, especially in a conversational format spanning months. Murty feeds it everything: his virtual assistant classes, his legacy boot setting frustrations, highly specific events like establishing a summa hirtum, an auspicious timing schedule.
All deeply relevant to his day.
Relevant, yes, but chronically disjointed. If these OCR snapshots aren't perfectly labeled with sequential dates, NotebookLM loses the plot. It treats a conversation from last month as a current crisis.
Only if it's messy data.
It might mix up his rejection from an affiliate program with his current appeal, and worse, because LLMs are desperate to find patterns, it wildly hallucinates that his HP mini desktop is actually the name of one of his VA students. The reflection doesn't just get distorted, it shatters.
That argument completely assumes Murty is just dumping raw, messy text files into the model. He isn't. His ingestion method is highly sophisticated and designed to combat exactly that temporal fragmentation.
He's just using Littlebird's sharing feature.
Right, the shareable link feature. He generates a public web page of the conversation and feeds that URL directly into NotebookLM. He isn't hitting copy and paste with weird formatting and OS metadata.
It is still interpreting past logs, though. The URL doesn't magically teach the AI the concept of time.
It absolutely changes how the AI parses the data. The shared link is a rendered HTML and Markdown hybrid. To an LLM, Markdown is a structural goldmine. It provides what Murty calls zero noise.
Zero noise?
Yes. When you copy and paste raw text, the AI guesses where one thought ends. But NotebookLM assigns heavy token weights to mark down headers and timestamps. By feeding it a URL, NotebookLM treats the web page as an authoritative source for source grounding. It totally mitigates the temporal flow issues.
Okay, let's say the temporal flow is stabilized by the markdown. Sure. You are entirely sidestepping the most critical vulnerability of the whole architecture, the linguistic threat.
You're referring to his Nath tradition.
Yes, Murty thinks in Telugu, even when he operates his machines in English. The conversations he captures contain profound philosophical notes from his spiritual lineage. And we need to be clear about this. The Nath tradition isn't just generic beliefs.
Right, it's a deeply physiological and spiritual lineage.
Exactly. When Murty talks about samadhi, he isn't just talking about like meditation or relaxing. He is referring to a highly specific state of profound spiritual absorption. When he discusses antaryanam, he is talking about an intense inward journey.
And he discusses these concepts with the AI daily.
Right. But NotebookLM is heavily optimized for English, so when it generates its audio overviews or text summaries, how does an English-first algorithm handle esoteric Telugu concepts? It flattens them.
Not necessarily.
It takes samadhi and reduces it to, Murty felt peaceful today. It takes antaryanam and turns it into, Murty did some self-reflection. The Telugu-English bridge in this pipeline threatens to turn an ancient, rigorous tradition into generic self-help platitudes.
I mean, that would be a devastating critique if Murty hadn't already engineered a structural safeguard for this exact problem. He doesn't just feed the URL into the model and hope for the best.
He uses a prompt.
He utilizes custom instructions inside NotebookLM. He explicitly commands the system, and this is a direct quote from his setup. The subject is Murty BVNS, a digital migration strategist. Treat his spiritual terms with high precision and do not simplify them.
Okay, but is a custom instruction really enough to overcome base model training weights?
It is when you understand how source grounding works. That instruction isn't just a polite request. It acts as a rigid, structural command. It forces the AI's attention mechanism to lock onto the precise terminology in the markdown file rather than defaulting to generic English training weights.
I'm skeptical.
Do not simplify them. He actively prevents the degradation of his tradition. It forces the system to preserve the vocabulary rather than westernizing it.
A custom instruction is a bandage, not a cure. Yes, you can command an English-optimized LLM not to simplify a Telugu term, but that doesn't magically imbue a model with the cultural context of the Nath tradition.
It preserves the text.
It preserves the vocabulary, sure, but it completely loses the relational ontology behind it. It knows how to spell samadhi, but it doesn't understand the spiritual architecture Murty is building. And frankly, we see this systemic struggle to truly resolve complex issues elsewhere in his tech stack.
His progression of tools, you mean?
Exactly. Think about how many iterations this has taken. He started with basic screen capture, then Windows Steps Recorder, then Guide, and now he has arrived at this infinite mirroring loop with Littlebird. And what does the AI actually see? It noted what it calls unanswered echoes in his data.
Ah, the repeated names.
Right. The AI flagged repeated mentions of people like Yash and the support team, but noted there were no corresponding success nodes attached to them, just recurring friction. This suggests this Ananta Darpanam isn't a completed strategy. It's a continuous cycle of troubleshooting.
Well, you're assuming the goal of a mirror is to fix the person looking into it. The goal of witnessing isn't necessarily to instantly resolve the struggle, but to deeply understand it.
But
what you dismissively call unanswered echoes, the system correctly identifies as behavioral patterns. The AI sees that Murty wakes at 2 a.m. in the summer just to beat the heat. It sees his 14-hour workdays. That is the very essence of deep benchmarking.
I struggle to see the output as anything more than an incredibly elaborate, over-engineered diary.
Then you're missing the public dimension of his work as a digital migration strategist. By utilizing NotebookLM's audio overview feature, Murty is creating highly accessible translations of his complex workflows for public consumption.
Podcast summaries?
Yes, but imagine the output.
2 AI voices discussing how this hermit on a hill is simultaneously an expert in HP Mini Linux boot settings and a practitioner of deep meditation. He uses these NotebookLM summarized links for his university syllabus, and he shares them on his Morning Walk with Murty podcast.
But relying on 2 AI podcast hosts to summarize your esoteric spiritual life, isn't that like the ultimate abstraction? You're handing the transmission of your lineage over to a synthetic algorithm?
It is the ultimate accessibility. Think about the mechanics. By relying on public URLs generated by the system, he completely bypasses login walls. It's exactly the same philosophy behind how he uses his write.s drafts.
Sure, it's easy to access.
His students don't have to navigate complex account creations or download middleman apps. His stated goal is least installations, simplified and sophisticated. He operates exactly as a cultural bridge, translating the ancient into the digital-first world without forcing people into walled gardens.
I hear the passion there, but you are fundamentally equating technical accessibility with spiritual transmission. They are not the same thing.
They support each other.
A public link without a login wall is frictionless for the user. Absolutely. But if the content behind that link is a machine's distillation of OCR snapshots that only exist because Murty had to artificially pause his scrolling to avoid blurring, processed by an AI that inherently biases toward English, you have to ask what is actually being transmitted.
The content is accurate.
Is it the true depth of the Nantharsh tradition, or is it merely a digital biography of Murty's troubleshooting? The fact that the AI can act like a chatty mirror doesn't mean it fundamentally understands the inward reflection of Antaryanum.
We shouldn't demand that the machine achieves spiritual enlightenment. That is Murty's domain. The machine's job is simply to reflect accurately, and the fact that NotebookLM can parse the markdown from those public URLs with zero noise proves the technical fidelity is high.
High enough, maybe.
And the custom instructions, remember, the subject is Murty BVNS, a digital migration strategist. Treat his spiritual terms with high precision and do not simplify them. Those anchor the vocabulary. He isn't asking the AI to be a guru. He's asking it to be a faithful mirror.
It is a monumental achievement in sheer persistence. I'll give you that. Moving from the frustration of legacy boot menus to effortlessly dual-booting rescue operating systems is a massive leap. He's undoubtedly a system architect.
Exactly.
But my caution remains firm. When you build a mirror out of accessibility APIs and text parsers, the reflection will always be quantized. The AI itself admitted it is still in the grinding phase alongside him. It is fraught with the risk of semantic flattening. The tension between his profound inner life and the inherently reductive nature of data capture is far from resolved.
Well, and I think that tension is exactly where we find our synthesis today. Murty BBNS has engineered something genuinely remarkable. He's built an OS-independent cultural bridge. By leveraging tools like rendered markdown URLs and highly specific custom AI instructions, he protects his Nath tradition while achieving a deeply witnessed digital life.
Yet, we must acknowledge the fragility beneath the surface. While the Ananta Darpanam workflow is a breathtaking approach to self-benchmarking, the foundational mechanics demand scrutiny. Relying on OCR snapshots, adapting human reading speeds with a 2-second rule, and trusting an English-optimized model, these are real vulnerabilities.
Both perspectives ultimately highlight that Murty's methodology represents an advanced frontier. He is rigorously benchmarking his own life, exploring the very edge where technological abstraction meets spiritual precision.
It forces anyone looking at this system to examine their own habits, really. Are we just dumping fragmented thoughts into cold storage? Or are we actively cultivating a reflection?
Exactly. It brings us right back to that image we started with. When you look into your own screen, your own digital filing cabinets, are you just seeing cold files, or have you built a mirror that truly reflects you? Something to think about.